Megaman X. Earth is in such turmoil due to the Reploid uprising that humans have decided to colonize space instead. They've decided to complete a project called Jacob, which includes the elevator to the moon, which I don't know why people wanted to make rail lines that go to the moon, but that's what they decided to do, and it does work, I guess. Things go bad when Val shows up and kidnaps Illuminae, the Reploid director of the project. Sigma is therefore suspected of being behind the capture of the Jacob project, suspected being the relative term, but since all next generation Reploids are now equipped with Axel's copy DNA ability, the game implies that some of the enemies are copies of the original, if not some of them may be original. We don't know. We don't even know if this is the real Vile. We just know it may be copy, it may be really him, considering that he died 3 times by this point, And yes, as X discovers very quickly that some of them even went as far as to copy Sigma, that just makes it even worse to know who's real, who's not real, and what's going on. But that's not even the main focus of the game. It's stopping the nonsense. At first glance, this game basically is a traditional side-scrolling variation of Megaman X7 without the free-range modes and lock-on and target cursor. This I would consider a good thing, but it's not quite the same though. The character models are completely different here, so unfortunately the duck is gone. And of course they tweaked a few of the things here and there. The gameplay is much closer to the classic 2D Mega Man games than X7, but it does bear some features from Mega Man X7, like the tag team. The tag team is here and in full force. Though you are still limited to bringing only 2 of your characters, now all 3 of them are actually viable in their own different ways and have puzzles in each level that each of them can solve. Prime example, Axel is needed in a few of the stages to copy an enemy ability to collect a rare metal or get to a hidden pad. But that's just how the game is, and I like the fact that they actually made all 3 characters useful for collecting a lot of the stuff in the game. This makes Axel actually useful compared to his previous incarnation, and where he was practically useless once you collected Mega Man X. That's right, Axel in the previous game had all the same weapons as Mega Man X. This game he gets his own sets of weapons, and all of them are actually very useful in their own ways because of how they shoot. Prime example, the Gatling Ice for Axel is actually very useful compared to X's Shatter Ice or whatever the hell it's called, in which it shoots in 2 different directions while Axel has a Gatling gun of ice, which actually helps with the boss that it's weak to. You also get a team attack in which you can actually end boss fights with it, and it goes glowed. It's really cool that just starts up. But a team attack is a screen clearing move that actually helps you out in pinches or with bosses to keep their health low. And speaking of, I like what they did with the boss fights. They actually added a feature that if you get the boss halfway, they do a super move and they start to attack more frequently than what they already do. Me putting the game on hard, this made the bosses more akin to being something like they were in Mega Man X, and it made the game a lot better to me. And now all 3 of the characters have completely different movement systems. Prime example, Axel plays like Bass from Mega Man and Bass, in which he doesn't have a double jump, but he has a float. He can shoot in all the directions, even all of his guns, and he can copy the enemy's abilities, which is great. And he doesn't have an energy meter, so he doesn't run out of anything unless it's a special ability. Zero plays just like Zero from all the other games, except for his attacks are a little different. He gets multiple different weapons this time, just like X7, but they're actually, good. And yeah, that makes Zero very, very viable in a lot of the stages. And X plays like your typical Mega Man X character, except for the fact that his charge shot is huge across that screen, and he's very endurance heavy. He's more the all-around type of character that you would use to get you out of situations and to kind of gauge your meter back. So when somebody dies, you can actually get them to revive back by filling up your team gauge. The team gauge fills up, your character comes back. You fill it up again, you get to do a team attack. I actually like this system. And the only way you can't bring a character back to life is if somebody falls into a pit or you fall into a pit of spikes. That's the only time it's game over regardless. Speaking of that, they adjusted the continue system. There aren't really one-ups in this game, but the retry system actually basically behaves the same way. The main difference here is that whenever you die, you can opt out to quit the stage and return to the stage select screen, keeping everything that you've collected in the stage, or you can just go back to the R&D lab from the start. You don't have to wait till you've beaten the stage to go back. This just means you don't have to kill yourself like you did in the original one. Also, there are no more rescuing hostages in this game, which is a very good thing. So all the upgrades besides like armor pieces are actually done in the shop, in which all you gotta do is collect medals, upgrade, you're done. That's it. Whew. Being this is a PS2 game, the backgrounds are rendered pretty nicely, and they do suffer a bit from the overhead problem that plagues several Capcom 2D games, and sometimes foreground objects can get lost in the background, making them difficult to distinguish from environment, but otherwise the graphics aren't bad. I do like how some of the stages, most notably the booster force, it actually rotates around and folds in on itself in interesting ways. And one of my favorite stages, the recycling plant, in which you're going down consistently and you have to keep a balance either with the middle of the stage or the top of the bottom of the stage, in which you can find ways to use the top of the stage to your advantage and fall down just on the right platform just to get to the right locations. But there's only one stage that I genuinely hate in this game, and that is both of the chaser stage. But the one I hate the most is the flying chaser stage. That one is the most annoying because of what you have to do to actually beat the stage, which is hit the boss enough to start the actual boss fight, instead of the other chaser stage where all you gotta do is beat the two things as you're driving through the snow, and then you continue on with your day. But unfortunately, yeah, that's the only problem I have. The game can't even pay attention to the background of the city. You're mostly paying attention to Gigavolt Man of War, because fuck that stage. Also, the music in this game is also some of the greatest, if not my favorite in the series. The soundtrack is very metal, and we gotta click rare metal, so the correlation is probably there. But the music in this game goes from deep metals to cool melodies, and once again, Booster 4 is being one of the greatest stages in the game with one of the greatest themes in the game. Just a melodic metal soundtrack. It's great. It's fucking great. So, the challenge. The challenge of this game, considering I did put it on hard, is while playing on hard, it had complete big difficulty spikes, considering that the damage I took was great, and there were more RNG locations for Val to show up, in which some of the levels would either be harder without them or harder with them. Finding the armor pieces for X were a little complicated. Some of them requires either some guides or something of that nature, or while you're just sitting in a random spot, you probably gotta do something to get this item with X. Getting 100% requires you to play longer than it is needed, because you have to collect a lot of metal or actually do multiple playthroughs, or you can just glitch the game out. Figuring out that all the bosses' patterns are a little different from the typical Mega Man X game, but once you figure them out, they are great, and struggling not to want to hurt somebody doing the Gigavolt Man of War stage, which was very complicated to do. But other than that, the game's challenge to get to 100%, which is what I did by the end of this, wasn't too hard. I was just glad this is the first time I was able to get 100% and make it the first Mega Man game where I 100% it easily. Okay, so my thoughts on this game. Well, while I love all the previous Mega Man games except for 6 and 7, obviously I hate those games with a passion. I'd rather play Mega Man X3 1,000 times before I play those games. This game felt like it took elements from every other game, and I genuinely loved that feature. The only thing that I wish that they added was the ducking, because even X7 had ducking. Even though that game was just awful and terrible and not necessary. But I do wish they did take the cell shading from the previous game, but that's just me. Other than that, the bosses were actually fun to fight. The music is actually great to just listen to. Some of the stages are just right when it comes to length. Both the Chaser stages are a bit annoying, but the Gigavolt Mana War being the worst stage in all of Mega Man history to me, besides Gates stage in Mega Man X6, but that's just here nor there. But it genuinely feels like a Mega Man game, and they're apologizing for the previous 2 Mega Man games by actually just making it straight simple. They even added intermission stages so you can have some extra stuff to do and gain some extra medals, so you can actually level up your character or do something that you need. By the time you finish this game, especially if you 100% it, you should be very powerful with all 3 of the characters, and then the game will actually be really good for you. But unfortunately, I don't think this game sold very well, considering that X7 was a travesty dumpster fire. But that's just, me. I genuinely love this game. It's actually my favorite in the series of Mega Man X games, and I actually did like Mega Man Command Mission. It was just a fun RPG, but like I said, a lot of people didn't like some of these games, but we'll talk about X Command Mission when we get to it, okay? Well, this is awkward. It would be the same rating as 7, which is Get the X Collection, but instead it's more positively Get the X Collection instead of negatively like X7, in which I would tell people not to buy that game. Yeah.